Hello and welcome to another edition of The Right Has Left. I am your host, Roy Garten, and we, as every week, we've just got so much to talk about in the past week with Donald Trump. In fact, some breaking news here just recently. So having said that, let's go ahead and get right into it. Because if we wait too long, I may have an hour and a half show. I don't want to do that. So, in breaking news, new role for Mike Walls. Yeah, we all know this poor guy here. He is the basically the goat or sacrificial lamb, if you want to call it that, for Pete Hegseth, because I don't know how else you can, say. So the new role for him is Trump's going to nominate him to be an ambassador. So he's going to nominate as U.S. ambassador, shifting from his role as national security advisor, because I said he's going to be the sacrificial lamb for Signalgate. Marco Rubio will now serve as Secretary of State and interim national security advisor until they can find somebody to replace him. Walls was expected to depart from his post in the coming days because he knew what was coming down. So he had been on a shaky ground since he added a journalist to a group chat on military strikes. Trump acknowledges that also that his tariffs could also impact consumers, but he downplayed the economy shrinking in the first quarter behind the scenes. As I move on to another story, White House officials describe intense pressure to produce trade deals as economic as anxiety builds. And as we all know, as I'm talking about some of the headlines here, that China is now going to consider or look at Trump's proposals, and that, of course, sent some of the stock markets going up a little bit. Trump appointed federal judge. Keep this in mind. Trump appointed federal judge in Texas ruled that the president unlawfully invoked the Alien Enemies Act and blocked the administration from quickly deporting some alleged members of a Venezuelan gang. Of course, as they had just recently, they had their first markups. Republicans remained silent during the markup and voted against Democratic amendments requiring immigrants to receive due process and prohibiting immigration and customs enforcement from detaining and deporting U.S. citizens. This thing going on here with the immigration status, I'm going to be doing a little bit more further details talking about this, but I have in my hands here a download from Pam Bondi where she's basically giving carte blanche for ICE to go knocking on doors without a warrant, without due process, and just taking people under the Alien Enemies Act. And, of course, that refers back to this previous thing that I was just talking about. So it's just getting disgusting how our government is just turning into more and more of an authoritarian type government where due process for people with crimes is just not being handled. Of course, we have a president with 14 felony counts, and he got his due process, but the hell with everybody else, huh? Yeah, and as I said, if they had actual facts that these are, against the Alien Enemies Acts, and they are in fact, committing these felony crimes, that's one thing. But as you already know, we're having a lot of people deported that have committed no crime, children with cancer and everything else, and it's just going on and on and on. So moving on, economist Mark Rugetz, a senior fellow at the National Foundation for American Policy, estimates that the $45 billion in new detention funding for a bill that they're trying to create to handle all these people is enough to detain 5 million people, or at least 1 million people a year over the next 5 years. That's in this markup that I was just talking about. An extraordinary immigration markup begins normally on this past Wednesday. Now, Jim Jordan, who is a part of all this, he Republican from Ohio, began the markup of the House Judiciary Committee as part of the Republican reconciliation bill with an expected opening statement, and he went on and on and on. This guy from Ohio, he accused the Biden administration of deliberately allowing millions of undocumented immigrants, and said voters gave Donald Trump and the Republicans a mandate to secure the border and communities. So that in itself is a wild statement. So as far as these ICE raids that are, taking down children and mothers, well, this guy here, his name is Tom Harden. he had a recent press conference where, he basically says, I don't give a crap about mothers and their kids, and it is what it is. Listen to this.
If you remain in this country illegally and you ignore a judge's order about deporting, if you choose to have a U.S. citizen child, knowing you're in this country illegally, you put yourself in that position. You put your family in that position. What we did is remove children with their mothers who requested the children depart with them. This was a parental decision. Parenting 101. The mothers made that choice. And I tell you what, if we didn't do it, the story today would be Trump administration separating families again. No, we're keeping families together. So when a parent says, I want my 2-year-old baby to go with me, we made that happen.
So as you can see by this is, in case you forgot, is Trump's little czar for the border. And he basically is just a talking head for Donald Trump. And it just goes on and on with the border. $45 billion, ladies and gentlemen, that's what they're going to be spending. $45 billion in detention funding and $8 billion to hire 10,000 more additional ICE agents. Those guys run around with little hoodies on their face so nobody knows who they are. And along with support staff, $14 billion in transportation spending to deport 1 million immigrants annually, and unprecedented fees that have at least $1,000 levied on applicants for asylum and parole, and $500 for temporary protected status. Now, these fees are designed to raise money and deter applications, including a minimum of $550 for 6 months work permits for TPS, asylum, and parole applicants. Now, President Donald Trump, just on this past Friday, unveiled his 2026 budget proposal, calling for $163 billion in sweeping cuts to non-defensive government spending, including multiple federal housing assistance programs affecting homeowners and renters. And this is something that I got to talk about just really quick. Let's go in and talk about HUD as far as one of those programs being cut. According to a 46-page discretionary spending request sent in by the Office of Management and Budget to the Senate Committee on Appropriations, the Trump administration is looking to slash the budget of the embattled Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, by $33.6 billion the next fiscal year. The lion's share of the HUD budget reduction, amounting to $26.7 million, will come from the State Rental Assistance Block Grant, which provides tenant-based rental assistance, public housing, and housing for the elderly and people with disabilities. Now, I'm going to pause right there, and because I've got something to talk about right there. Ladies and gentlemen, the HUD Rental Assistance Program, if it is cut, is going to be devastating. And I cannot emphasize enough, devastating to thousands and thousands and thousands, if not millions, of seniors and other people who with low-income situations across America. Now, here, let me give you an example. Let's say you live in a HUD assistant apartment and your rent is $800 a month. Typically, that rent would be over $1,000 plus a month. But because of the HUD assistance, people who are living basically on Social Security and are unable to work due to health reasons, disabilities, or other things, that comes in handy. So you do away with the HUD rental assistance program, and you've got these seniors, and I'm talking specifically now here in Florida as an example, who, there are 2 HUD assistant apartment complexes here where I particularly live. And you cut that, and and all of a sudden these seniors who are on fixed incomes and living on Social Security, now they got to, if there's no HUD assistance, you know damn well that these people who own these complexes are going to jack the rent up because they're not getting any money. So now all of a sudden their apartment, 2-bedroom apartment, is not going to cost over $1,500 a month. Where in God's green earth are these people supposed to get this money? Where? Are they supposed to pull it out of their butts? I mean, and of course, you've got this Republican Congress and Senate that's just writing Trump a blank check because they are scared to death to talk up to him. The hell with the constituents that elected him, because and these people got to talk up. Even if you were a loyal Trump supporter, you would. Let's say you have a grandparent or a relative that's on disability and they're living in one of these HUD assisted apartment complexes, and all of a sudden HUD's gone. What are you going to tell them? Oh, I'm sorry, I voted for Trump, and I'm sorry he wants to cut HUD, but Grandma, you go out there and do what you can. the bottom line, folks, is that these people are going to wind up on the streets. Now, Trump excuse is, well, it's up to the states to take care of them. So if you got a state like Florida where almost 60% of the population are senior, you think everybody living down here is making $6,000 a month and can just afford their condos or apartments and just pull the money out of their butt? And no. A lot of the people live down here on fixed incomes, and they're down here because of the weather and because of their health. And that's just a fact. They don't have that kind of money to be paying $2,000 a month for an apartment. That's why they were living in HUD assistant apartment complexes in the first place. And how, here in Florida, you think Ron DeSantis is going to lift a finger to help seniors if HUD disappears and they'll come into him and say, we need help? He's going to say, nothing I can do. Sorry, guys. Go live in the streets. Go find your relatives and move in with them. I can't help you. So, anyway, to move on, Trump says that these programs are dysfunctional and that states instead, as I said, should be empowered to design their own programs based on their unique needs and preferences. See, Trump's out of touch. The millionaire club, the billionaire club out there in Washington right now that's running everything, they have no clue how poor people live or lower income. They have no clue, nor do they really give a crap how they live. It's all about getting money to increase a huge military and look for tax cuts for the big corporations. And to get the tax cuts for the big corporations is basically cut everything else. So he wants to eliminate the Community Development Block Grant, known as a CDBG, by gutting $3.3 billion from that. The CDBG doles out annual grants to cities, counties, and states to provide decent housing and suitable living environments, but the Trump administration believes that grant program is poorly targeted and has been used to fund wasteful projects like theater arts programming for students, skateboard parks, and swimming pool renovations, and an additional $1.25 billion will be pulled from the Home Investment Partnership Program, ending it as well. It just goes on and on. He just wants to completely eliminate the housing and urban development programs because he doesn't think it serves anything. Really, really sad that we have to go on this kind of a deal. Again, I'm pretty upset about, trying to eliminate HUD because it does serve a real good program. Another program he wants to cut is LHEAP, which provides energy assistance for those who need it. And he thinks that HUD is basically another DEI program, diversity, equity, inclusion program that needs to be eliminated. So I don't I don't know what to do to talk about this guy. It's pretty freaking sad how he just goes on and the poor and the underprivileged people in this country are in trouble. It's either white privilege, lots of money, or get out. That's basically what it's coming down to. Another thing that Trump wants to do. That's right. And I talked about this earlier in the news. National Public Radio and PBS, Public Broadcasting System. He wants that out of here too. He's calling it biased and partisan news coverage, and his new executive order directs the Corporation of Public Broadcasting to cease federal funding for the NPR and PBS to the extent allowed by law. This is where it gets catchy. Allowed by law. I mean, allowed by Congress. Congress funds PBS and NPR, not Donald Trump. And so that's where it's going to be challenged in the court, is the Congress is responsible for that, and they've already funded it. So, in the 2026 budget now, since it's all Republican Congress and Senate, maybe they want to cut it, but right now he can't really touch it. So he says they have received tens of millions of dollars in taxpayer funds each year to spread radical, woke propaganda disguised as news. Unlike in 1967 when the CPB was established, today the media landscape is filled with abundant, diverse, and innovative news options. The government funding of news media in this environment is not only outdated and unnecessary, but corrosive to the appearance of journalistic independence. And Trump and his loyalists, including Elon Musk, have long complained that NPR and PBS are biased and promote left-wing causes. Alleged staunchly denied and terrible stuff. He actually went on Truth Social and said radical left monsters that so badly hurt our country. And that's what NPR and PBS is. So if that's what you want to believe. Again, folks, here's the real story about a public broadcasting system and why it was established. It was established to provide television coverage in rural areas that have no mainstream television station or a network. And also, it was established to help up-and-coming journalists in our colleges and universities who are majoring in journalism or on the technical side, broadcast media, how to operate a television station. And most PBS local stations are on the campuses and universities of our nation. And so is NPR. The local stations that carry the NPR network, again, are mostly college and university FM stations, low power, that, again, are teaching up-and-coming journalists how to have a job in broadcasting. I myself have my journalism degree, and decades ago, I got my degree at Central Wyoming College in Riverton, Wyoming, which is today Wyoming's PBS station, and I was getting my trade and my education working at that time a black and white station. Of course, it's now on color and has really grown and does a beautiful job, and they're affiliated now with PBS. It's Wyoming Broadcasting System, and as you all know, Wyoming is the most rural state of all of our 50 states here in the nation. It serves a purpose. And, if you think of Mr. Rogers, Sesame Street, and the Nature Program, and all of those wonderful programs originated from PBS. Marjorie Taylor Greene, though, says that they're all communism. It's all communists now doing that. So what it is the Republicans are whining because they didn't carry some stories like maybe the Hunter Biden laptop thing. They didn't go into deep stories about that. They're also upset because they talk about diversity, the LGBTQ community, and they talk about everything. And but the Republicans don't like that. They aired a story on drag queens named Little Miss Hot Mess. They were upset about that. They all want white nationalist religion and our way or the highway now. So it's extremely sad what things have come to. But again, my hat's off to PBS and the National Public Radio. I know probably a lot of young people aren't even aware of them, but you need to be watching those. There's some wonderful programs on there that a lot of us have grown up to. So I don't know what else to say about it except that it's pretty sad how those things have come, and I don't know. Hope something happens that we can continue to get PBS and NPR, and they're going to probably look for corporate funding to stay alive. But let's move on to our top story that I want to talk about today, and that is how I think, and a lot of other people thinking, of where we're going as a country. And that is my top story for today's podcast. And where are we going? Well, if you think back to the 1960s and where we are today and how things are changing, I honestly believe that the government under President Donald Trump is bending the arc of U.S. history in a new direction. It's just obvious. And it's going away from the civil rights focus of the past 60-plus years. We're even acknowledging racial injustice towards people of color is now out. Separating church and state is now out, according to Trump. Exposing anti-Christian bias and being anti-woke is now in. That's the cool thing. The Department of Justice Division, created by the landmark 1957 Civil Rights Act to defend Americans' rights, has a new mission: rooting out anti-Christian bias, anti-Semitism, and woke ideology. That's their new mission. The hell with DEI. The head of a division, Hamid Dahand, I hope I didn't butcher this person's name, and I'm so sorry if I did, told a conservative commentator, Glenn Beck, we all know who he is, that a majority of the lawyers at the Civil Rights Division, people who got jobs there to ensure equal access to the ballot box perhaps, are expected to resign with pay until September. At a White House cabinet meeting Wednesday, secretaries repeatedly sought praise from Trump for purging diversity efforts from the government. We're not organizing money based on the color of skin, said Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins, referring to contracts canceled at the USDA. If you're having DEI policies, we're not going to fund your projects. By God, the hell with you, said Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, bragging about how the administration will use taxpayer dollars to kill diversity efforts in the states. And I could go on and on and on about this. You can see where we're heading here. It is freaking scary how we have changed as a society in the first 100 days. It's big money, white privilege, or nothing. Everybody else, you can forget it. It's big money, white privilege, white Christian nationalists. And that's where we're at, or it's basically nothing, and that is side. Even Secretary of State Pete Hegseth, referring to bases that again share names with Confederate generals. This guy here, even who has surviving the hatchet on this thing with Signalgate, he's putting the Confederate named generals back on the bases. They're working with a strong arm elite universities to dropping DEI programs by threatening billions in funding, as you know, with Harvard, including for scientific research. And he wants to return the names of certain bases in the South to, as I said, the names that they used to have for Confederate generals. And it's just amazing what he's doing here. Mark Upgrove, a presidential historian and CEO of the LGBA Foundation, he said Trump's policies and the way he's orienting his government combined as an assault on the Great Society legislation Johnson pushed through the 1960s, including the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act of 64, and the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965. President Lyndon Johnson shakes the hand of Dr. Martin Luther King. You all remember that before he was assassinated. So those two actually work together to create a fair and even type of civil rights for everybody. And here we go down the rabbit hole again. So I wanted to talk about this because if you all remember the Great Society, look it up if you don't, compared to what's going on today with Donald Trump and his cutting the spendings of Medicaid. He wants to cut Pell Grants. He wants to cut the Head Start program. He wants to cut HUD, as I talked about earlier. It's just going on and on and on. If unless you're filthy rich and you're white, you have really no place in the upcoming, agenda of Donald J. Trump. And it's just sad. Now, I mentioned earlier that I wanted to talk a little bit about what was going on here with Pam Bondi, and this is a good place to do it as part of my top story here. Pam Bondi she's focused on extricating anti-Christian bias in the government, and she had a recent meeting, and I mentioned she is aggressively trying to change the laws and giving ICE all the opportunity and resources that it needs to get immigrants out. Now, I'm going to put up on the screen two pieces of information that this is actually you got to hunt for it, but you can pull this down. And let me just get my glasses on here. Okay, the top one there is actually from the Office of the Attorney General. And it's an internal memorandum that, it got leaked, but it's not everybody can read it. And that is the removal of the alien enemies. And, as I said, a judge recently put a stop on, this is not you cannot use the Alien Enemies Act to pull people out of their homes without a warrant. You can't use it to, eliminate due process. But if you look at the page 4 there that I got up on the screen, and it says right here, given the dynamic nature of enforcement operations, officers in the field are authorized to apprehend aliens upon a reasonable belief that the alien meets all 4 requirements to be validated as an alien enemy. This authority includes entering aliens' enemies' residence to make an AEA apprehension where circumstances render, and it is impractical to first obtain a signed notice and warrant of apprehension and removal. Okay, that's what Pam Bondi has come up to. So, that, ladies and gentlemen, is scary. Now, to follow up on this, I want you to watch this particular video, courtesy of K4 in Oklahoma City, where ICE, they got the wrong house, and they raided this woman's home and her kids, and her husband they just moved to Oklahoma City like 2 weeks before. And if you do the research, I guess ICE had the authority to break into the home, but the trouble is, as soon as they realized that they had the wrong house, they should have stopped right then and there after they ID'd the people and give their apologies and then move on. And it took 2 weeks for ICE to finally apologize, but they still have not given back this woman's her money or her property, and they don't know how long it's going to take because they don't give a crap, to be honest with you. But watch this story.
Fear.
Because I did feel at times I felt I was going to die.
So much fear.
I kept praying. I said, God, please let me live through this moment.
Humiliation.
I was a zero. I was nothing.
Pure disbelief.
I just couldn't understand, how is this happening to us?
All just for wanting a fresh start.
You come to Oklahoma and you get treated like this. For what?
This woman, who we're calling Marissa, and her 3 daughters came to Oklahoma from Maryland looking for a slower, more affordable pace of life. They rented this house in a nice, seemingly safe northwest Oklahoma City neighborhood. Her husband planned to join them this past weekend, but any semblance they had of comfort went out the window when 20 men armed to the teeth busted through it Thursday morning.
I don't know who they were. They had guns. It was dark. All the lights were off.
They were federal agents, Marissa says, with the U.S. Marshals, ICE, and the FBI.
And I kept asking them, like, who are you? What are you doing here? What's happening? And they said, we have a warrant for the house.
They ordered Marissa and her daughters outside into the rain before they could even get dressed.
They wanted me to change in front of all of them, in between all of them.
The thing is, the suspect names on that search warrant were not Marissa's or anyone in her family's. They were, however, names listed on mail still arriving at the house. Former residents, perhaps.
We just moved here from Maryland. We're citizens. That's what I kept saying. We're citizens.
She says they didn't care.
We weren't criminals. Then why were they treating us like criminals? We were here by ourselves, that we didn't do anything.
The agents ripped apart every square inch of the house, taking their phones, laptops, documents, and their life savings in cash as evidence.
Like, I have to feed my children. I'm gonna need gas money. I need to be able to get around. Like, how do you just leave me like this, like an abandoned dog?
And when they left, they told her something.
I know it was a little rough this morning. It was so denigrating. Like, you do all of this to a family, to women, your fellow citizens, and it was a little rough. You have literally traumatized me and my daughters for life.
This family has virtually nothing.
And I said, when are we gonna get our stuff back? He was like, it could be days or it could be months.
Nothing but questions.
Well, what if I would have been armed? What if you're breaking in? What am I supposed to think? My initial thought is we were being robbed. My daughters, my female daughters being kidnapped.
Nothing but likely lifelong trauma.
We have guns pointed at our faces. Can you just reprogram yourself and see us as humans, as women, a little bit of mercy? And care a little bit about your fellow human mate, about your fellow citizen, like fellow resident. We bleed too. We bleed just like anybody else bleeds.
So as you can see, this woman was terrified. Again, wrong house. Excuse me, I apologize. Right house, but wrong people. And so, you know, I'm going to give them the one off that, you know, they probably, because of the situation, maybe had a right to get into the home. But immediately, as soon as they found that they had the wrong people, they should have stopped. And they didn't. They just continued tearing up the woman's home, taking her money, confiscating everything, and not even let the kids or her get dressed, throw them out on the street. And again, this is what we've come to, Gestapo type tactics that everybody's just saying, hey, I'm fine with that, whatever, man. So moving on, the Trump administration is also continuing to dig in that the claims that the tattooed symbols on the fingers of Kilmer Garcia, a cross and skull and a smiley face and a marijuana leaf, are proof that the man is actually a member of MS-13. Now, I have a couple clips from a recent interview he did with ABC News, and before I get into the part about the MS-13 thing, I want to show this clip of our wonderful president talking about the independence of our nation. He had no clue what the heck the Declaration of Independence was, other than it's a beautiful document. Watch this.
And of course, you have the Declaration of Independence.
What does it mean to you?
Well, it means exactly what it says. It's a declaration. It's a declaration of unity and love and respect, and it means a lot. And it's something very special to our country.
So, as you saw the surprised look there on the journalist who was doing this interview, Donald Trump, you know, he has no idea what the Declaration of Independence is, and that's pretty sad. I'm going to be honest with you, he probably doesn't care what the Declaration of Independence says. He doesn't understand that it was a document when the 13 colonies separated from Great Britain. He doesn't understand that this is why we really celebrate July 4th. And he doesn't care about, in the Declaration of Independence, what its ideals are. And that's equality of all men and women today. And it's our rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that the government derives their just powers from the consent of those that they govern. Key factor, he doesn't care about that anymore. The people, in other words, the 56 delegates that signed that in the Second Continental Congress, believed all of that. And the Declaration of Independence, signed on July 4th, 1776, is what it is. It isn't a beautiful piece of paper that has lots of love in it, Mr. President. But it's just damn sad that he gave the answer that he did. And before I move on to local news here in Florida, the other controversial part that was in this video was the fact that Donald Trump could actually pick up the phone and free Garcia, which he doesn't want to do. And they had a little bit of a discussion about, does he really have MS-13 on his knuckles? Watch this.
Legally. Now, in some cases, we have judges. In some cases, they're radical left judges. What happened the other day where a judge was protecting a criminal was horrible. And I think she's got big problems, frankly. And there are a couple of them like that.
I want to talk about one
Wait
man.
a minute.
Yep.
We have to be treated fairly by judges. And we're not being treated fairly by all judges.
Oh, that's a subject. So you're saying that you don't like some of the rulings, some of the court orders?
I think the rulings will be overturned, yeah.
All right. Well, let me ask you about one man and one court order. Kilmer Abrego Garcia. He's the Salvadoran man who crossed into this country illegally, but who is under a protective order that he not be sent back to El Salvador. Your government sent him back to El Salvador and acknowledged in court that was a mistake. And now the Supreme Court has upheld an order that you must return him to facilitate his return to the United States. What are you doing to comply?
Well, the lawyer that said it was a mistake was here a long time, was not appointed by us, should not have said that, And just so you understand, the person that you're talking about, you know, you're making this person sound, This is a MS-13 gang member, a tough cookie, been in lots of skirmishes, beat the hell out of his wife, and the wife was petrified to even talk about him, okay? This is not an innocent, wonderful gentleman from Maryland.
I'm not saying he's a good guy. It's about the rule of law. The order from the Supreme Court stands,
He came
sir.
into our country illegally.
You could get him back. There's a phone on this desk.
I could.
You could pick it up, and
I
with
could.
all the power of the presidency, you could call up the president of El Salvador and say, send him back right now.
And if he were the gentleman that you say he is, I would do that.
But the court has
he's
ordered
not.
you to facilitate that.
I'm not the one making this decision. We have lawyers that don't want to do this.
But the buck stops in this office.
No. I follow the law. You want me to follow the law? If I were the president that just wanted to do anything, I'd probably keep him right where he
Supreme
is.
Court says what the law is.
Listen,
By law.
and you'll pick out one man, but even the man that you picked out, he said he wasn't a member of a gang. And then they looked, and on his knuckles, he had MS-13.
There's a dispute
Well,
over that.
wait a minute. He had MS-13 on his knuckles tattooed.
Oh, he had some tattoos that are interpreted that way. But let's move on.
Wait a minute. Hey, Terry.
He did not have the letter MS-13.
It says MS-13.
That was Photoshopped. So let me
That was Photoshop. Terry, you can't
had-
do that. Hey, they're giving you the big break of a lifetime. You know, you're doing the interview. I picked you because, frankly, I never heard of you, but that's okay.
This
I
would
picked
come.
you, Terry, but you're not being very nice. He had MS-13 tattooed.
We'll agree to disagree. I want to move on to something else.
Terry, do you want me to show you the picture?
I saw the picture. We'll
and you think
agree
it was
to disagree.
Photoshop? Well,
Here we go.
Don't Photoshop it. Go look at his hand. He
Fair
had
enough.
MS-13.
He did have tattoos that can be interpreted that way. I'm not an expert on them. I want to turn to Ukraine,
No,
sir.
Terry,
I want to get to
Terry,
Ukraine.
No. He had MS as clear as you can be, not interpreted. This is why people no longer believe the news, because
when
it's
he was
fake
photographed
news.
in El Salvador, they aren't there. But let's just go.
Now, I'm putting up the pictures that they were talking about, and you can look at this. If you look closely at Garcia's hand there, because when you can see that the MS-13, you can see the little white dots on there. So I'm going to be honest with you, and others agree that was Photoshopped. And then you look at the other picture that was taken when he was in El Salvador. There is nothing, absolutely nothing on his hand. But Donald Trump swears just by the picture, and Trump is known for this. He believes anything that is immediately handed without fact checking that is on his hands. Even gang members, experts disagree that the tattoos alone are not proof of members in the gang, and there's just a bunch of symbols. So I'm sad to say I don't think Garcia is ever going to come back, because Trump doesn't want to bite the bullet and admit that he's wrong. He's just going to leave him there. And whether he has symbols on his hands or not, whether they're real or not, and there's actually a difference between what you see there in El Salvador in the prison on his hand or what you see here. He still believes that he is part of the gang, and ladies and gentlemen, that is just unfortunately really, really sad that he has to think that. So moving on here, I always like to come back with stuff going on here in the state of Florida, because as my last piece of things here on this podcast, Donald Trump, excuse me, Ron DeSantis, he's back in the news again. What he's been doing lately here is, again, as you're well aware of, he had this little $10 million little thing going on, and he's now very proud that a lot of people here have been arrested in the state of Florida, because the fact of the matter is that he's going along here with everybody else about arresting illegal immigrants. So here's what's going on with our wonderful friend in the state of Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis, and he is saying, I am proud to announce that about 1,100 people were arrested as part of the week-long statewide immigration enforcement sting known as Operation Tidal Wave. He announced this just this past week, calling the sweep a model for the nation as authorities seek to remove tens of thousands more immigrants living in Florida. Now, I don't know whether they're illegal or not, but let's remove them. So he is just jumping all over the world about that this is just a wonderful thing, even though he is under investigation for maybe taking $10 million and putting it in his wife's nonprofit account, and they're still looking into that. So, but in the meantime, he's going to be happy that 1,100 immigrants have been arrested here in the state of Florida. And the other thing that Mr. Ron DeSantis is doing, and again, this is the Republicans trying to stop anybody else from maybe coming up with something or trying to do something that maybe be in their best interest as citizens of these United States and here in Florida over anything else. But Ron DeSantis quickly, and I mean quickly, within 24 hours, signed House Bill 1205. And what that is, it takes aim at citizens' petitions for amendments to the state constitution, imposing additional regulations and harsher penalties for wrongdoers. Changes implemented by this law, now listen to this, is as follows, and I have it right here. Petition sponsors must affirm that no felons handled the petitions unless their rights were restored, and that each person collecting petitions is a U.S. citizen. For each person found to be a felon or a non-U.S. citizen, the person doing the petition is going to be fined $50,000. Sponsors must submit the ballot, title, ballot summary, and full text of the proposed amendment to the Secretary of State petitions form starting on July 1st. Petition forms must include the full text of the amendment and the name and address of the sponsor. In addition, petition forms will require voters to provide their full name, address, date of birth, and ID number. In other words, that's on their driver's license, ID card, or their Social Security number. I wouldn't give my Social Security number to anybody, so let's go with the driver's license. And also starting July 1st, people may not deliver or possess more than 25 signed petitions along with their own and immediate family, unless they are registered petition circulators. In addition, petition circulators must be residents of the state. No, that's a gimme. I can go along with that. And now they're going to have a training program for people who are going to be doing petitions. And people may not register to collect signatures until they go through this state certified training. You know, basically what it is, I want to see what they're going to be doing, get some insight. This training includes an overview of petition gathering process, registration requirements, explanation of state regulations, and the criminal penalties for violators. Now, let's go back a couple of weeks and we're going to talk about something here. Now, why is this all going on? Well, as you know, during the last election, let's say legalizing recreational marijuana in the state of Florida, it had 59% votes from the citizens here in the United States here in Florida, and but the state required 60%. So that ballot just barely failed. And they're out there right now because I talked to a guy. They're trying to get it back on the ballot again. So this is why this is coming up. And if you, the big stink about all this is there was a heavy campaign ad about not supporting this amendment. How was that paid for? By Ron DeSantis' $10 million that was funneled into his wife's nonprofit, and then that was moved out of her account and her nonprofit into these PAC committees that paid for all of these anti-marijuana ads that was on television. Thus, the amendment failed. But again, Ron DeSantis said that everything he did was perfectly legal. So I don't know. So. This stuff just gets crazier and crazier and crazier here in the state of Florida with Ron DeSantis. Anyway, that's your edition of The Right Has Left. I am Roy Garten. Thank you for joining me. I look forward to your comments, and we'll probably have some more breaking news next week. Until then, you try to have a safe and productive week. Take care.